Okay, in this video, I'm going to look at what a good GPC looks like, hopefully. So what I'm going to do, first of all, is in this video, I'm going to outline what my GPC is going to be about and the process that I went through. So this is my plan, and I use the planning document that we use. But you'll notice that I've just put this down in note form. Okay, so I start off, and the topic of this is going to be how has Britain's soft power been affected by Brexit? So what I'm going to do is I've basically tried to break up each section is 2 minutes, into sort of 5 points, because that is what is going to correlate to my little cue cards. So I'm going to mention it's about borders and identity. I'm going to outline my key concepts: power, sovereignty, legitimacy, my theoretical foundation, liberalism. Notice there's only a couple of key concepts. It's better to only have 2 or 3, be able to talk about them in detail, than to try to talk about everything and for it not to be relevant. So why is my case study unique? Why is it worth happening? It's sort of unique because it raises this issue of the end of globalization, global governance. This is really important. This is one of the things we're really missing at the moment. We're not making links to the wider issues. Okay, and I'm just going to outline. I'm going to look at it from the view of the British government. Then I'm going to look at the view of the British public, and then I'm going to look at sort of Europe, specifically the EU. We'll talk about the British government. I'm going to say they're obviously pro-Brexit. I'm going to talk about their claims about taking back sovereignty. I'm going to look at some Daily Mail, Sun headlines. How is this linked to a rise in British nationalism? The fact that politically no major British party were prepared to ask for a second referendum. And I'm going to talk about how some have said it's going to be detrimental to soft power. And here I'm sort of trying to show that I really understand Brexit as a political issue. Then I'm going to talk about the British population. So I'm going to do some polls comparing how they felt in 2016 to 2020, a rise in racist hate crimes in Britain at that time, a list of companies who've moved their HQ to Europe. Going to look at the soft power rankings. Then I'm going to talk about sort of the EU. So it's not really the rest of the world. It's really the EU. The things like the Erasmus study program that's been shut down, the lack of free travel, and how this could result in Britain being isolated, and European attitudes towards the EU. So finally, again, this is really important. Wider context, the rise of populism, the rise of nationalism, not just in Europe, all over the world, and the idea that this is linked with the end of globalization, a possible shift in sort of the power dynamics from Europe to Asia. And really my conclusion is going to be that soft power is a relatively new thing. It's linked to globalization. So are we seeing a decline in states caring about soft power? Okay. Now, that was my planning. And actually, when I came to outline this on my cue cards, that I'll share with you later, I changed it slightly. Certain things changed. I found that I wrote it out 4 or 5 times and practiced 2 or 3 times before I was happy with it. So that's the first thing. You're going to have to practice a lot. Okay. These are my visual aids. I have Exhibit A and B, headlines from the Sun and the Daily Mail. I have some graphs from 2020 YouGov polls in Britain asking were we right or wrong to leave the European Union, and would we vote? What would we vote if there was a new EU referendum? And I've got another poll from a research facility about how Europeans feel about EU membership. It's on 2 pages. And I've got a poll from the same source, the Pew Research Centre, about European views of potential Brexit. And of course, my bibliography. So notice there that all of these add something. There's none of these that are in there just to give the audience something to look at. None of them are heavy in text. I mean, obviously the newspaper is, but it's not text that I've written. So what I'm going to do now is I am going to go away and I'm going to try to record my GPC. Again, what's really important is the timekeeping. Okay, I'm trying to be really structured about spending 2 minutes roughly on each of these sections, because if you go over time, in your conclusion, when you're talking about the wider context, you're not going to have time to do it within the 10-minute mark. And that is going to massively affect the mark band you can get into. So hopefully I've added comments about analyzing the case study within the wider context of global politics. Hopefully with this, I'll be able to link it to the wider context. I'll be able to use theoretical foundations and key concepts. I'll be able to show that I understand the political issue that is Brexit. And I will be able to give different perspectives. And I'll be able to answer this question to some extent. How has Britain's soft power been affected by Brexit? So 3 really important things. Number 1 is planning. Number 2 is practice. Okay, I've already done this. 3 or 4 times I tried to practice this. And every time I came away and thought, that's not quite right. I need to change this. I need to change that. Okay, so 3 or 4 times. And every time when I'm doing it, I'm thinking, have I talked about this? Have I talked about that? Oh, I missed that. I spoke for too long about this. I didn't get that in time. Actually, you know, is this visual image really necessary, etc. So that's the main thing, is that you need to practice and practice and practice and practice. Apart from anything else, it makes it much easier for your delivery. And you'll notice, as I said, I'll upload these later, that all I've got here is sort of little notes. I don't have sentences. I've got tiny little things. I think you can have them slightly bigger than that. But they're very small, because if you try to read off sentences, it's not natural. So I will record, see how it goes.